Hello and welcome to our latest charla with Angeles investors. Our charlas are an educational tool for angel investors and focus on topics relevant to angel investing through a Hispanic and Latinx lens. My name is Israel Munoz. I am one of the directors here at Angeles Investors. Today, our charla will focus on the state of Latinx founders. If you have not seen our previous charlas before, we highly recommend that you visit our YouTube channel and see our latest charla. It is a special edition charla with David Cohen, who is the co-founder and CEO of Techstars. For those of you who are new to Angeles Investors, we are a Hispanic and Latinx focused angel investor network. Our mission is to find, fund, and grow the most promising Hispanic and Latinx ventures. We aim to have 250 Angeles, 50 startups, and $10 million invested by 2025. For today's charla, I will be giving a short welcome, followed by the charla itself, the state of Latinx founders, with a 15-minute session for questions and answers from both the host and the guest speaker. And then after that, I'll be giving some quick closing remarks and reminders on upcoming events. For those of you who are attending the charla and would like to have questions for the panelists, you can hit the Q&A button below. You can add questions to this at any point in the charla. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest speaker, Mariano Suarez-Battan. He is the co-founder and CEO of MURAL, and our host, our very own Emma Rodriguez Ayala. She is a board member with Angeles Investors. Emma, you have the floor.
Gracias, Israel, and welcome everybody to this charla. I'm very excited to be here with Mariano today. As Israel mentioned, I'm a board member at Angeles, and on my day job, I'm the general counsel and board secretary for LGIM America, the U.S. investment arm of Legal & General Group, which is the fourth largest asset manager worldwide. So talking to somebody that is in the business of helping global organizations collaborate better, it's definitely a forefront of mind, given everything that we're all living through right now. So we're going to do a couple of things with Mariano. First, I'll let him introduce himself and share with us a little bit about his journey from idea to creating a scalable business, MURAL, that now services about 40% of Fortune 100 companies. We'll deep dive a little bit more into capital raising. Mariano recently successfully raised Series B round of over $118 million. I know for most of our founders and for our angel members, we generally look at Series A or pre-seed rounds. So we have the opportunity to talk with somebody who has gotten already past that level. And then we'll pivot a little bit about lessons learned about being a Latinx entrepreneur and growing a business as Mariano has. So without further ado, Mariano, maybe we could kick it over to you and you can start sharing that path that you followed and the salient aspects of your history and bio that led you to where MURAL is today.
Hello, Emma. Thank you for the invitation. And hello, everybody else attending, watching, or for my future self when I rewatch videos when I am bored and retired or something. So, yeah, I'm 40 right now, turning 41 next week. I started my entrepreneurial journey. This is very Latin American relevant, which is that I graduated the day that our president de la Rúa was exited from their pink house, we call it, in Argentina with a helicopter, right? In 2001, December 20, 2001, and I had to become an entrepreneur because nothing was going on in the world, right? I was interviewing for BCG. I went to like a relatively prestigious business school, and again, I was pretty good as a student and everything. It's really hard. I was competing with 27-year-olds as a 21-year-old for the same job in BCG, for example, right? Anyway, I was always a curious guy with technology, and I thought it was a good idea to start a company to make software. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew it was going to be an interesting idea. It was fun, and I liked software. But the reality is that, I mean, I didn't know exactly what was the pain, what was the problem, and so on. And that in a way generated that, again, we didn't really start a company. We started like a thing, right? In general, what I'm recommending people when they start something new is that they're obsessed about one problem in particular with one group of people in particular. Things are so much easier when you have that level of focus that it's amazing. The good news is that at some point I said, oh, it could be interesting to do games, video games for advertising. And we can become the best at video games for advertising in Latin America. I was still in Argentina. And I started to become the guy that was speaking about games for advertising, games for advertising, games for advertising. I had never built a video game in my past, and the people that I put together to build this idea had never built video games in the past. After 5 years, we were able to put together multiple games played by tens of millions of people. We sold that company to a company called Playdom after we did a soccer game that was on Facebook, played by 20 million people during 2010. That's when we sold the company. 1 million per day during the World Cup. So why were we successful? Because we were crazy in a way, right? We did, but focused, crazy, but focused, right? So we're going to be the best in the world creating games for advertising. We became that, and then Facebook opened their platform and said, now we're going to be building our own game. And that's where this pivot happened. And that was actually when we raised the first serious angel investment in that company. Before that, it was friends and family that, to be honest with you, just trusted me as an individual. They didn't have no clue. It was my former mother-in-law and a friend of mine's dad when I was 25, right? So no professional angel investor association or anything. I just like hustled my way through it. And it's good to see that now there's so many professional or part-time professional folks helping the new generation of folks. And the other thing that it's great to see is that there's a lot of know-how, right? Because there's more cases and more thought leadership, and also more frameworks to think about these things that allow people to make less mistakes, right? And hopefully through the talk today, I can share some of those. Because fortunately, I went through now 2 successful companies. I also did some that were not as successful. Yeah, still a long way to go though.
So maybe if I could push you a little bit there. You talked about having to pivot, after the marketplace changed, but also the value that came in being incredibly focused, but also, as you called it, crazy. And for that, I actually just mean committed, I think is what you meant, like committed, focused on what you were doing. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So you go all in, right, until you achieve the success you want. Can you talk about how that then helped as you went into Mural and creating that new business after you pivoted?
Yes, I think it is crazy though, a little bit. The reality is that it's a non-rational decision that you go pursue this, right? So there's a lot of like comments out there, like if entrepreneurs, it's like a constant reduction in risk, but when you start, like there's a lot of risk, right? I mean, because there's nothing there. So there is a little component of craziness in the sense that, again, it's not the safer, most profitable way. So it has to be an obsession about a problem to be solved or something to be built, right? That needs to be there. So a little crazy, probably necessary. Now, so we sold that company, the company called Playdom. Playdom was acquired by Disney. So I was working for Disney for some time. That's my only employer, actually, in my whole life. That wasn't myself or my company, right? So it was fun to see how I was not a very good corporate citizen. And in addition to that, I was coming up with the idea of something new after I was presenting new ideas for new games, right? And I was collecting inspiration on a PowerPoint deck, And it was very raw, inconsistent stuff, but I thought there was something that I need to connect the dots. So I presented the dots, and people were receiving a presentation, and they're presenting like dots, 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 dots. There was no story yet. So when people were receiving the message, first of all, like my storyline was horrible. And then they were also, because it was a keynote, a PowerPoint, they were getting informed. And that particular meeting in which I was presenting was a green lighting meeting. So they were evaluating the thing. They were not what I was trying to do, co-create with things, no shoulder to shoulder whiteboarding session, right? So I realized that there was something missing. This was 2011, right? There was something missing in the digital workplace that provided the affordance of being able to create early on and iterate early on with permission and social tacit permission, not just formal permission. And that's where we started. And the reality is I was crazy and I had a lot of money because I had sold the company. So it's a very bad combination that probably made me waste 2 years because it was too ambitious, too broad, not focused, right? I mean, our product was for everybody. Everybody could use this. And yes, everybody is starting to use this now, 10 years after, right? And the reality that I wish I could have coached myself to be obsessed and focused to just one group of people, right? Group that had this problem already 10 years ago and not today. It was only when we did a startup in residence inside IDEO in 2013, 14, in which we had this core idea of a flexible UI combined with a business case, which is folks, teams in large corporations that wanted to work like the folks in IDEO. IDEO is a very well-known or relatively well-known design firm, and they coined the term design thinking in a way and helped start that movement. And they generally worked in amazing, beautiful office spaces in person with all these foam boards and and sticky notes and Sharpies, and they would whiteboard and they would create together and product together. And the folks in large corporations that wanted to work like that, they couldn't because they had like their cubicles in different parts of the world. And that's where we said, okay, great. We are a piece of software that has all this flexibility, blah, 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 but helps people run better meetings and in particular better workshops when they are working in design thinking, agile methodologies. And I see there's a Jesus Mantas in the attendees. I don't know if that's a Jesus Mantas of IBM, but if he is, IBM was in a way the first client that we had that was the ideal customer profile, as we call it today. So IBM, Autodesk, Intuit, Steelcase. Those were the first four in which we kind of modeled our company, and in a way, having focused on doing that in better ways. But we have not changed what we do since 2014. So yeah, I can keep on going, but that's the early phases.
That's perfect, because that actually gets us to the point that then we're going to pivot to capital raising. But I thought in that area, found interesting your comment that you first find the problem, and then you find a group that is experiencing that problem right now. You focus on them and you build the solution that fits for them, even if that solution could be used by other people. You sort of laser focus on that group. Do you think, because I understand that you also do angel investment on your own, do you think that's the sort of recipe that entrepreneurs, as they are thinking of this, getting the idea to a scalable business, you think that is what you look for when you're investing as well?
Yes. So I tell B2B guys in particular, guys, if you can't find 10 people out there, have like a VP director level job that doesn't have a $50,000 problem that you can solve, and they're willing to give you 5-10K in advance for you to solve the problem for them in 6 months, then you probably don't have a business yet. Right? So why raise money, deal with investors and all these things? Show me that you can get 10 people that are more or less the same to say, yes, I want this. Like the Kickstarter, right, thing. In a way, a small Kickstarter for B2B makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that 100% is that. And then of course, like depends on the stage in which you are. It's like, okay, do they find a way to consistently identify and sell these people, right? So it's channel fit. So yeah, it depends on who they are, when they are in their journey. It's like more focus on product market fit, more focus on channel market fit.
Perfect. Let's stick a little bit with sort of that early stage when they've got that, they found the solution, they're helping somebody, and they need to start raising capital because they actually need to fund what they're doing. When you and I talked before this, I actually found fascinating your views on capital raising, at what stage, what people should think of. And I also loved your comment that your ex-mother-in-law was your first funder and that was personally stressful. So one of the things you had said, and I'll walk through all sort of the ideas that you had, but you had told me you wouldn't recommend raising money in the early stages. And you mentioned that again. Can you walk us through how then founders need to think about that early stage when they're building, and maybe why they shouldn't tap external capital at that point?
Mm-hmm. At least professional pain in the ass capital, right? Because in some way, like they need to feed themselves via savings or via something else as they do this, or do it during the nights, right? In a way, there's certain things that can be done while you have another job, especially in the remote work arena. And the reality is that if you don't have customers or potential customer prospects, you don't have a business, right? And of course, with media companies or social networks and so forth, or TikTok, right, where it's a volume thing first, that's another story probably, but not really. I mean, and in any case, I'm because of the last 10 years, I'm more focused on B2B now, so I can talk more about B2B. But if there's no one in a business that would eventually pay you for something, it's going to be like super hard for you to build something. Yes, there are some business that volume needs to be first, right? And there's something that need to be like, there's this company growing like a lot called Main Street right now, that they basically help startups or small companies get government benefits, right? But again, they could have started saying, hey, you know what, Mariano, your company is 250 people now, like all these things. Did you know that there's all these credits? Do you want us to do it for you? Okay, yeah, sure, go at it. And they manually do it, and they, oh, here's your saving, and here what it is, right? So the problem was already there. I mean, these guys basically like they help you collect all of the government credits and rewards that you might be qualifying for. And it's super easy. It's like free money in a way, because you don't do much, and they give you, oh, here's your savings, and they collect a piece. Anyway, I think that there's always going to be 10 people that have that problem, and you need to like probably put yourself in a position of privilege, I said before, before you raise money. So you either need to be like the person that talks about that all day long. It's a specialist. I mean, you're blogging about it, you're talking in events, you're coming to the Latinx angels and talking about things. So you're talking about the thing, and people start to trust you and believe that you know the space, right? Then after that, it's like, okay, I know the space, and I have these customers that maybe they're not paying much, but they raise their hand that if we solve this problem, they will pay. Ideally, if they pay, even better. If they pay and they stay, even better, right? But it's about getting more and more validation in advance, because that's the other thing, right? The amount of dilution that you get early on with startups, it's too much compared to if you're successful, what the real value from angel investors is, which the reality is like angel investors are helpful, but they're not the ones running the show, right? The reality is like it's the founders and the team. So it's a big risk though. That's why, I mean, big rewards also. But if you can minimize the risk early on and getting a position of privilege as an entrepreneur, you're much better suited there.
So maybe let's parse that out a little bit. So for early founders, when you say position of privilege, you're saying sort of like build the brand, build your expertise, so that when you go to capital raise, sort of your name carries weight in a sense, right? You're not just like random person looking for money. And you do that, and at that stage, you recommend sort of using your personal savings, going to the family, friends.
Yeah, the extra time in the weekends also, right? Like the reality is like to build a reputation, you don't need that extra funding, right? Like you just need like spend the time to study, spend the time to make opinions, spend the time to write, spend the time to, and set up that personal brand first with a very tight focus, right? So I'm observing the people that work in blah 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 blah, and start like writing, build an audience, right? And then build the revenue part.
And then when you go to capital raise, one of the things when we talked about, you said that those first meetings you take, unless you're desperate and are going to take just any money that is out there, look for patient capital. What did you mean when you say look for patient capital?
Yeah, I mean, so it's been 10 years, right, for my thing. Well, 9 years, right? So it's not easy, and the reality is that it's rare that there's big returns, and rare that they're like happening overnight successes, right? So yeah, that was my when I was racing the last round, people were asking me, what are you looking for in an investor? And I said, okay, well, first of all, money, then patience, then, and this is like the relevant one, why I chose who I chose, but an unfair advantage getting to the Global 2000, because that's who we sell to, right? But the reality is that most investors not only not provide any value, but most investors, like that's not sort of like more people are just getting started investing generate more friction, more pain in the butt than actual value, right? And I like that you guys, in a way, that are interested in angel investing and so forth, are doing it through a group, right? Because all of you, I mean, might do one thing here and there, but you're learning from each other and holding each other accountable, right? Because I've seen a lot of stories, horrible stories of investors not doing the most elegant thing to people either, right? So that's why I like when angel groups exist. Angel groups that actually angel invest, not angel groups that angel invest. So I like that you have a goal for revenue, for money putting there, because 15 years ago I was seeing some angel groups in Argentina that were starting to form, and like they had these entrepreneurs come in, they presented, and oh yeah, well, and I asked like, how much money have you invested? Oh, nothing yet. Oh, you're angel investors. Then like, come on. So I like that you guys are learning from each other and holding each other accountable, and that's very important. That's one of the signals of maturity that we've seen in the last 15 years. Right?
Yeah. And a plug for Angeles, that is something that we're incredibly committed. And from the beginning, when it was 5 people in a WeWork room trying to figure out how to fund Latin entrepreneurs, it really was focus on funding and not focus on finding. I mean, we need to find them, but we need to fund when we do. And we are on track, if things continue as they are, to actually within our first year have invested at least $1 million in founders just in 1 year. So pretty excited about that and agree with you. And so maybe when you talked about patient capital and, and how not all investors are helpful, do you mean patient capital with you as a founder, as you sort of kick out the kinks in the business, as things potentially go bad? Or do you really just mean like, just give me the money and wait till it come talk to you? Like, what are you thinking when you think of patient?
So as I said, ideally the people that you take money from are interesting people. I was making a point, but I mean, there's a lot of very interesting people out there that are becoming angel investors, and yeah, I mean, making sure that there's value added is better than non-value added. But at its core, it's an investment, right? It's money flowing to fund a team that is 24/7 thinking and doing things for that company, right? So on the angel investment side, the patience is like, because as I said, like in the beginning, especially when there's companies that did not de-risk early on, that's why I recommend entrepreneurs and angels to also like find the moment in time in which they're more confident investing. it doesn't mean that angel investment needs to happen pre-seed, right? In the last round, I grabbed a group of individuals that are like all excellent, interesting people in SaaS. The ROI that they will get from this is not the same that the ROI of a early stage. But again, it's where they feel confident, and they also like are interested in investing to learn, right? And learn from me, learn from each other. That in that group of people that put money in the last round. So that's the other thing, right? Like make sure that you invest where we can provide the value. For example, I'm very good at early stage because I have in the early stages of things.
Mhm.
And I'm learning the later stage because I'm running a company that's getting later stage. But I'm not an expert in helping a company go through a mezzanine investment to go, you know what I mean? Or internationalization. I look for other folks that can complement me on that. So similarly, try to figure out your angel profile too. What type of companies are you more excited about? Because it doesn't need to be seed rounds, right? You can invest in later stage round as long as there's like a fit in the type of investment, right?
That sounds great. So maybe that actually, because you've started pivoting to sort of the areas where you feel like these are areas that I know I don't know personally, and where we look for partners to complement us, which is always one of the, I always say, lessons learned for entrepreneurs. You don't have to figure it out on your own, right? You can partner with others. So maybe why don't we pivot to that area? Sort of as you think back over the last 10 years, and particularly given the last Series B raise, which I suspect required a lot of investor due diligence and a lot of questions being asked. How about you tell us about your successes, challenges, how things you wish you would have done differently, or things that actually worked great, even though that's not how you planned it?
Mm-hmm. So two separate threads here, and you might have to remind me about the one I don't choose to reply. But on the due diligence, this is super relevant because again, for the Latin community, because I see a lot of people that are sometimes optimizing for the short term, maybe not paying properly, like taking some advantages based on the law. And I've never done that, and it showed in the speed of due diligence, right? It's beautiful to come into due diligence like, you know what? Yeah, here you go, and they go fast. So sometimes, I mean, early stage entrepreneurs in Latin America may be making that mistake, and it makes no sense, right? Like if you're going to plan to big something big, the mistakes that you're making in the beginning might be super expensive for you later on. So make sure that you have a great lawyer and a great accountant when you start your company, and think about what this could become, and try to see what's the minimum amount of investment you can do to become that. But it has to be super, super clean. If not, it does become a painful due diligence. Fortunately for us, it was not, because we played by the rules and the books, right? And sometimes it's annoying because it's a lot of money they need to pay in taxes, this, taxes, that. But it's what it is. So coming back to the other question, I literally forgot it. So help me out.
No worries at all. It really is more around those lines, right? And I think that the last point you made is back to the partnering, right? Understand to partner with the right service providers and people.
So the reality is that, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the angel investors that invested in Mural early on, 2011, 2012 actually, didn't realize the upside, right? Because unfortunately, we took money probably a little too early. As I said, like we're not yet knowing what we're building, and then we had to wait a lot of time to the market to be ready. So we were too early for a market. We were all too early for a market, the investors, myself, everybody. So we took in seed funding, all different colors of seed. So price round, then we did a convertible note, then we did an extension of convertible note, and we added a cap. Then when the convertible note converted, we added another more money, and then we did a safe note after that. And then in 2017, we were running out of money. And we were not growing at the Silicon Valley 3x, 3x, 2x, 2x, 2x per year standard. So it's really hard for people to external people to believe in this idea. And also, again, IBM was half of our revenue. And a lot of people were concerned, oh, what happens if IBM leaves? Because we had not renewed for next year. So like, we're screwed if IBM leaves. But they won't be leaving because we're providing great value to them and they know that and so forth. Anyway, so no one would give us money, and we were already using, revenue-based debt, right? So I was at capacity, and I knew that I was going to have up to $1 million hole for sure for a year. But the reality is that because of not amazing growth and this lack of money, I said, well, we're going to be, and I actually, we were very close to having one of our original investors putting money, but they split up as a partnership. So watch out, don't split up Angel X, Latin angels, because generates conflict to your entrepreneurs. But they wouldn't step up and invest anymore, right? Their funds were late, so they're 7 years into the thing, 6 years into the thing. So they wouldn't double down on us. But fortunately, we had money because we sold the company to Playdom and then to Disney as founders. And we said, guys, we are not going to let this go down. We're going to be running this one as again, revenue and debt type of company, right? So we are buying back. And we generated a founder-led recapitalization with the same terms that we had almost agreed with the company. And we allowed our angel investors to either stay, sell their portion for debt, or invest behind us in the same terms as us. And some stayed, some sold, and no one invested any more money, right? So again, I personally had a very high exposure at some point. My co-founder also put money in, and yeah, we survived that year. We issued new debt, and with revenue and debt, we were able to carry through 2018, and then early 2019, things started to work really well. Like IBM was not just our customers; like we had like other customers like pulling from us, right? So after I said, okay, great, our customers are happy. We might not be investing or have a acquisition engine just now that works really well to get us to super high growth that is needed to be a Silicon Valley star. But there's something here. And that's where I started conversations with the only guy that signed a term sheet for a Series A. So it wasn't like, okay, the Series A. It was this guy that knew me from 7 years ago. I met him in a cocktail dinner with Endeavor. I know, you know Endeavor, the non-for-profit.
Yep.
I'm an Endeavor entrepreneur, so was invited to that thing. And I sat next to Weston Gary. Weston now runs his own fund, but 7 years ago, he was part of Bain Capital Ventures. And we started like making a good relationship. And when it came, like he started his fund, he was calling me early to mid 2019 to ask me what I thought about this other company. And he asked me, "What are you doing?" "Oh, we survived. Remember I told you, yes." And now things are going really well. I think that we are ready to raise a Series A. And in July we closed the Series A. We also had another guy come in, Darian from Gradient, the Google fund, because I also had met him as a peer entrepreneur 6 years ago, and say, "Hey, congratulations, and can we get into the round?" So yes, and that's how the round was formed. But the reality is that unfortunately, most of our investors, angel investors, are not in our cap table anymore because we were probably too early when they invested, and we didn't have clarity to high growth until early 2019, and of course this year with the pandemic that we didn't know what's going to happen.
lots of lessons learned, both, you know, for you as an entrepreneur, but I think as our angel members listen as to how angel investors sort of can think about these things. I would call out a couple of things. One, your note about understanding the value of the business, the value proposition, and what you're trying to accomplish, even if the short-term financial metrics don't look exactly how the long-term value is, because these are long-term investments, right? You're not looking to year necessarily to get out. Second, you as a founder pivoting, right? You pivoted when you realized sort of what would be happening in 2018, put your capital there. Your investors could have pivoted with you as well, but not most, as you said, didn't choose to do so and missed then the growth that you have experienced since, right? So they were early, they didn't pivot with you, they didn't understand the long-term value of the business and sort of missed the upswing, which always sucks as an investor because that's what you're investing for. And then the last one I thought was interesting, which is the basic one of make the ask, right? This was a person you knew in a particular and you asked for it, right? You knew when it was time to again go and ask for capital, but this time for maybe a different type of investor than the one you had before. So I think those are all really sort of fantastic lessons for both our founders and our angel investors listening. I'm mindful that we're almost at the Q&A time, and I want to make sure we leave that. But I guess I have two more questions for you, unless there's anything else you would add on that. But do you feel that with everything going on currently in the marketplace, right, and this focus on funding diverse Latino or diverse founders, including Latinos, and building diverse and inclusive teams, something which you are doing, do you feel like this is a different environment for the Latino founders out there? Like, what do you feel is the current status of Latino founders as they're looking to capital raise for their businesses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that I so there's that, remind me to tell you about the Series B situation. And yeah, I mean, I like to, I mean, even though, I mean, born in Argentina, grew up in Argentina, lived in the US when I was a kid. My dad worked for IBM. 1992, I lived in Chappaqua, where the Clintons live. But I always thought of myself as like a citizen of the world, right? That I happened to be in Argentina and I use the Argentinian flair and craziness as an advantage. But always, I mean, thinking, yeah, I'm one more. And probably the endeavor, role modeling that they do with my now friend Wences Casares and some other people that were when I was in my teenager years or college years, speaking at events, talking about their entrepreneurial journey. I said, like, hey, I can be like that guy. Like, that guy is like, he grew up like similar to me or whatever, right? So that thing, I think it's already past, right? Like, anybody knows that they can be an entrepreneur if they want to. The question is like if they should, right? Because again, I mean, you shouldn't just start a company just to start a company. You start a company if there's a business problem that you're obsessed about, they want to spend 10, 20 years dealing with, right? And the other reality is like the most likely outcome of that venture is I will die, right? Versus if you join also being entrepreneurial, a company that had found product market fit, that has found channel market fit, that's so much faster, so much cooler. Right now, our business, there's a lot of problems that we are having to deal with, but at least we know that there's people that care about what we do and are willing to pay us money and are expressing their love, right? We have a lot of things that we have to deal with, tune up and so forth, but the reality is at least there's market pull, right? It's super frustrating when you have like something and no one gives a shit, right? So it's important to make sure that you are starting for the right reason, not just because you want to be an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur, it's not fun. I mean, you're like 24/7 thinking about things that, I mean, maybe you don't want to be thinking about. Right? And the other thing is like, so there's more know-how, there's more availability, there's more permission to fail, there's more permission to start, there's networks to support you, there's more again, best practices and frameworks and free software and so forth that you can use, right? I insist that the goal of entrepreneurs should be like to put themselves in a position of privilege, right? All the time. If you don't have nothing, okay, get famous, right, in your space. If you have, if you're famous, get the first customers, get many more customers, and then raise money. It's the other way around. You don't raise money to achieve something you do, but you achieve something to raise money to achieve more, right? More of the same. And investors, in a way, they don't want uncertainty. They want more of the same in a way. That's, we're investing money. We're not, I don't know, making art, investing money. You want more money later, and fun on the way, right? But ultimately, it's an investment. So, and then of course, like there's a story around like, do you want to make a company that will be sold eventually, right? That's another thing, and it's not, no, that's not necessarily the case. But if you want to make something that needs venture scale, you probably will need some venture capital to achieve that.
It sounds like, sorry to interrupt, but I do want to get your story in the race B.
Yeah, the Series B.
You have a few questions.
Of course, the thing with the Series B is that we already had product market fit. We had a lot of revenue. It was the first time in my life that I was not begging for money. I was deciding who I was taking money from. And then I said, oh, this is like how it looks like. And the reality is everybody could be doing that. Maybe not 118 million scale, right? But at all scales, you should be able to be in control of the fundraising process. Because you shouldn't be, there's no need to be urging and begging for money. Because again, if you have clients are willing to pay, that's what business is all about. Of course, yeah, there's other things. But anyway, I'm talking first principles here, right? So it's not applied for every single thing.
So it sounds like Series B at that point, given that you had gotten yourself in a position of privilege, it allowed you to control the process, which is a good transition to some of the questions that are coming up, which are around, if you have the ability to choose between, capital sources, how do you think about those? And not just like angel versus this, but even at the basis of, do you take, equity capital? Do you take a loan? Do you use your own money? Like, how do you choose who to take money from and when?
Mm-hmm.
At this point where you are?
Yeah. So again, the different money from different purposes. For example, there's this revenue-based revolvers line of credit, right? So depending on the MRR that you have, they give you up to 6x MRR, and we use this way of funding to transition in that nowhere's land period, right? So that's a good one to, once you have product market fit, put some fuel to get some extra sales going, especially if you charge per month. Because if you charge per year in SaaS, the nice thing is they collect in advance, so you have positive working capital in some regards. But when you have monthly payments, if you're charging for SMBs or with a credit card, that helps you finance growth that way. So the reality is that, yeah, depending on where you are, different types of instruments that there are. So yeah, there's, probably another talk to be done on that. When it comes to angel investor, as I said, like, I don't think that angel investment needs to happen at pre-seed or seed. Yes, that's like generally where angels can be helpful and so on. But angels can be helpful later stage too. The people that, again, put in as an individual group, as a syndicate in this last round, led by Alison Pickens, there's like 20 people in there that they're all amazing in different ways. Actually, the CRO that again is joining us next month came through a reference from one of these people, right? They may not be like super available all the time, like the angel investor that puts you under the wing, but yeah, think about that. Think about like, when do people have expertise to help you with which part of your next milestone?
And that makes sense. And again, they're very much tied to where you are in your business and where you are in the position of privilege you've put yourself in to be able to attract the type of people who are willing to give you their support. A couple more questions coming in. One, you mentioned earlier having to be crazy because of the crazy risk associated with starting a business. And the question is, can a founder be risk averse? Or do you think they have to be comfortable just with the world of risk? Are there things that founders can do to sort of make the process maybe more comfortable for somebody that is uncomfortable with risk?
Well, your job is to mitigate risk, right? It's not that we all have risks as individuals. I don't like the risk of this ceiling dropping on my head right now, right? So it's not that you have to love risk. You have to like get risk out of the way. That's the whole thing. And my point before is like, as soon as you can get risk out of the way, especially around the market fit, or that there's a solution fit, right? Like that you're solving a problem, the better. I mean, you can take other types of risk, right? Like, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's you need to like get risk out of the way. You want to build repeatability, right? At some point, that's entrepreneurship, right? So it's imagination, creativity, innovation. Entrepreneurship about scaling that innovation. So you cannot scale something that's not repeatable. Thus, there is less risk on that thing. So I mean, you have to be a little crazy because you have to believe that the effort is going to be paying up later on. Not that you have to be crazy as in, I like risk, bring me more risk.
That makes sense. And again, tying it up to the earlier conversation, it also is about knowing your weaknesses, and you really reduce risk and mitigate risk if you know where your weaknesses are and find people who can partner with you and who can be expert in those areas. So definitely a way for founders.
We didn't talk about, I mean, founder composition, building your team for different phases of the business also, because there's certain people that like one moment in time of a business or are good for one moment in time of a business, but then not so much. So there's yeah.
We have one more question, but honestly, if you want to tackle that one that you just raised, that would be actually fantastic. Because one of the questions that we have is, what is the one piece of advice you could give your younger self about starting a company? And maybe you can address that, but also address about particularly team building and how you build the people that you need around you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I think that having an angel investor in your portfolio of angel investors that has seen that thing and can give you tips and so on around team building, those are the things that are really hard to learn if you have not been in the seat, right? So I mean, that's definitely it. And how to think of hiring is super hard. I think that most of the mistakes that I made in the professional life related to hiring in a different moment that the person could have done it, right? And yeah, I was fortunate with the founders because they were very different than me, right? Like more technical and product minded, and more business and product minded. So we complement each other really well for technology type companies, right? For if we had to do something else, probably we were not a good team for that. But yeah, I would say like I need to think. I mean, I didn't think much about it, but probably the biggest mistakes were not because of like not finding the right type of person for the next milestone that we need to achieve, and also probably not putting myself in a position of privilege to be able to hire that person. In a way, executives are also quote unquote angel investing, right? So similar situation. If you're needing to beg people to come join with you, probably not. No one wants to work with you like that way. Whereas if you have something interesting, very focused and so forth, the people that are interested in that problem space will also tend to gravitate your way, right? And then the other thing is like, yeah, probably an angel investor can help you assess if there's a mutual fit when on the stage, right? There's some people that are great at coming up with things. There are people that are great at scaling up things and so forth. And that is something that I was not very self-aware on when I started, because I never operated in a large company, right? So I couldn't see that at scale, and I never operated in a scale up, which is something that's also very interesting. I think that it's better to be part of a company first and then start up something, because you can get to learn from inside.
So we have one more question. It'll be our last question. But what I found interesting is you said, advice you wish you would have been given was that of when you're bringing people in for what point, at what point in your company. And I had never thought about it, but it does make sense having the experience of going as an employee of a company that is starting up and scaling up gives you sort of the learning that you need to do it on your own as well. So the last question is actually taking us back to the issues around what we wish we would have done differently. And it makes sense as Angel sitting here being like, oh, those angel investors that originally funded you missed out. What was it that you saw in your company that made you decide, even though things don't look great, I'm going to double down and we're going to keep this going, even if I lose my investors? What was it that you saw that you don't think your angel investors and others saw? Other than you being awesome, of course, you could just say, well, I mean, it was me and I'm amazing, but what did you?
I was going to wrap up with that one, but no, first of all, we had customers. There were some people around the world, sophisticated people paying for our service, right? The other thing is like we had a team that was working well together and I wanted to keep on going. Then, it's the people, right? There was evidence that we had happy customers. There was no evidence that we can collect new customers at scale. We didn't have a channel market fit yet, but product market fit, I think we had one. Some investors said no because IBM is an exception. They said it's like no, well, it's not an exception. It's like a big company. It's not an exception. It's just we'll get more than like them, and now we know that. But back then, not many ones saw that thing. And then the other thing is like, yeah, I mean, our team was there, and also we had like a big list of things to do. We knew that we were not done. Like we had to build a sales and marketing organization. We had to build all these other ideas in the product. We had to do all these things. So the reality is that I saw that, and I saw the other things, like maybe it doesn't become a venture business, but maybe it's a good business for us, right? And maybe we're wrong that it was like a super thing, but it's maybe like a small thing that for us as founders is good enough. And maybe it's not like a venture return, so we don't need to have external investors, but it could work for us. So, and then of course, yes, we invested in ourselves.
So that'll make sense. And maybe what I would call out is that you were close enough to the product, to your customers, and to your own employees that you were able to make that assessment in a way that that maybe the angel investors couldn't, in part because of what they were looking from their investment, all of which makes sense.
Yeah, there's two more things. So one is, so we had a board member that was, and one of our investors, and he wanted to make it, but the rest of his partnership did not, and the following investment. And then the other thing is like the angel mindset is like, okay, I invest once and then I forget. And man, yes, I mean, that's how I've done it before. Instead of like having a strategy to follow on, or at least having a strategy. My first batch of angel investments were like, here you go, I mean, I like you, and then I lost most of my money. Now I'm a little more savvy about that. But the reality is like you need to have like an investment strategy as you have it when you have and maybe the investment is like invest and forget, which is a strategy too. But for that strategy, if you're too early, okay, the risk is that things like this happen. And it's okay. I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, right?
So that's a great way to end, because it actually flips us into having that strategy as a founder, as an investor. I think some of the lessons you have discussed today, having purpose and focus on the problem that you're trying to solve, but also focus as to who you're trying to solve it for, definitely an important lesson for our founders. And as angel investors, really understanding the value proposition of the business and when you need to double down, even if it doesn't look exactly how you originally thought it looked. And for us at Angeles Investors, that is, of course, something that we're sensitive to, and one of the reasons why we think about follow-on investments and pro rata rights as we look at our investments. Mariano, thank you so much for taking the time out of being so busy to share all of this information with us. I know it was great talking to you before and now. Unless you have anything else that you want to end with, we'll kick it back to Israel, but I don't know if you have anything, last words you want to say, Mariano.
Go to mural.co, and the reality is that we're fortunate to be where we are right now, but it was a tough journey. I moved from Argentina with my wife and a 1-year-old kid. It was a big effort, right? It's 7 years, 8 years. Sometimes some angel investors made some comments, because some of them like showed, hey, what do we have now from Mural? A couple months, I was like, well, nothing. No, how come? You screwed us. Like, and in that meeting, I remember like not controlling myself, and it's super tough, right? To be an entrepreneur, an expat entrepreneur in this case, it's not easy. So the other thing that we didn't talk about is like, it's again, you're angel investors for the money, but again, you're still angel investors, right? So be compassionate with your founders. They're super, it's hard, right? So thank you for supporting them, and looking forward for you learning and having fun and getting that super Spotify level rewards at some point.
Thank you so much, Mariano. Israel, back to you.
Thank you all so much, Emma and Mariano, for that conversation. It was fascinating. And I'm confident that our founders and our members, our unheadless investors, are going to be taking some great insights from that. I just want to wrap up with a couple of things. For anybody out there who is interested in potentially becoming a member of Unheadless Investors, we have 3 basic requirements. The first is that you must be an accredited investor under SEC guidelines. The second is that you must invest a minimum of $20,000 per year. And third is that you must actively support the mission of Unheadless Investors, which is to find, fund, and grow the most promising Hispanic and Latinx ventures. For those of you interested in joining, you can contact Marisol Reyes. She is the head of memberships at Unheadless Investors. Her email is available right there. And then finally, I just want to give a brief overview of some upcoming events. On October the 29th, we will be having an upcoming charla called Bringing Women into Angel Investing. This is a private event for women only. If you are interested in learning more about angel investing, please contact members at unheadlessinvestors.com to solicit an invitation. And finally, prior to our next pitch night, we will have another charla focused on due diligence. And that sums it up. Thank you all so much for joining. To the future.